Let's bring in Zeke Miller and Michael Graham. Zeke is a CBSN political contributor and White House reporter for Time. He's in Washington, and that's Michael. He's a CBSN political contributor also and a columnist for the Boston Herald. He joins us from Boston. All right, let's talk about this Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. The president said that it's up to Congress to make this work, but Congress has failed to pass comprehensive legislation this term. So where does this go from here, Zeke, especially in light of what we just saw the president's tweet?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, DACA came about in 2012 in part because Congress wouldn't act on the DREAM Act or on comprehensive immigration reform in the Obama era. But the politics have really changed on this subject. DACA as a program, is broadly popular with Americans, even Republicans, even if procedurally they disagree with it. We've heard a whole parade of Republicans saying they disagreed with the way President Obama did this going around Congress in 2012. But in terms of the outcome, they like it. They want to find a way to save it through Congress. So the politics have really shifted over the last five years. The real question is, can Republicans who control the House, the Senate, and the White House really come together on this very controversial issue? Can a clean version of a DACA fix pass Congress? Probably not. Might it be coupled with something like border wall funding or something else? It's really a little too soon to tell. There's certainly a will, a desire to do it. But there's been a will and desire to do lots of things in Congress, and they haven't been able to get things over the finish line. So we got to see where this shakes out over the next couple of weeks. And
what do you think, Michael? Because obviously there have been some very deep-seated divisions when it comes to the issue of immigration. And, in the past, there have been many, many failed attempts at some sort of, quote-unquote, comprehensive immigration reform legislation. So what happens now? What's different this time?
Well, the first thing you have to do when you talk to Republicans about this issue is to wait through the 5 minutes of them yelling, Obama and the Democrats controlled Congress for 2 years and did nothing, because there was no attempt to do anything about it then. And so set that aside. We are where we are. And we are where we are in part because the Republican establishment and along with Democrats refuse to acknowledge that there really is a problem with our immigration system right now. It really is a problem when people can just walk into your country and announce, I'm going to stay, and apparently there's nothing you can do about it. And that really bothers Americans, particularly the standing in line part. They don't like the idea of people cutting the line. But at the same time, when Americans see these actual DACA young people, they don't want to punish them either. And so you have these two competing forces, which is why I believe that if there is a resolution through Congress, it will be, as Zeke said, it'll be two pieces. I don't know about the border funding, the wall funding. That's a little radioactive. But I talked to Mark Krikorian with the Center for Immigration Studies today, and also Mickey Kaus, who works on this issue from the left. He's a person on the left who supports border security. And they both mentioned the E-Verify system, which puts a burden on businesses, not on the immigrants. The idea of a clean bill coming through, if Republicans let that happen, they might as well hand the Democrats Congress in 2018. Their base will stay home.
Interesting. All right. Well, Congress, Zeke, has a laundry list of items it needs to check off on a very tight schedule: raising the debt ceiling, a Harvey relief bill, and a budget bill, tax reform, and now immigration reform. So where do these items rank, Zeke, in terms of urgency?
Obviously, raising the debt limit is probably the most critical in terms of the long-term financial stability of the country. The U.S. debt has never really been in question other than that 2011 debt ceiling showdown. So that's sort of the first thing. If that didn't happen, if there became a showdown over that, it could potentially be catastrophic for the economy. The good thing is that seems to be sort of pretty well settled. Everyone is on the same page that this needs to happen. And probably following with that, money for Harvey, potentially seeing something along those lines coming out in the next week and a half, some sort of immediate disaster relief, and we'll see the impact of Hurricane Irma now coming through. If that number needs to be increased beyond the 7.9 that Congress, that the White House has said to Congress we need for that, and then you're looking at again, keeping the government open after September 30th, FAA reauthorization, National Flood Insurance Program also needs to be reauthorized by the end of the month. So eventually all these things will probably get done, but tax reform is really, which had been the priority of the administration going into the fall. There's just really no bandwidth for that in September.
President Trump will meet with congressional leaders on Wednesday, Michael. It'll be his first face-to-face with all four of the top leaders in both chambers. What do you think we should expect from that?
Lots of Trump patting them on the back and trying to work them as people, because that's what he is, a salesperson, but nothing that can change what Zeke just described. Someone told me, Zeke, that this is kind of like frat hazing week on steroids for Congress. So they've got this like 12 days of just, we're going to do what? And it's all not, they'll never get it all done. They're going to have to punt on all kinds of things. And there's nothing that President Trump can do with those people to change the calendar. I thought it was very interesting that you're going to see a prominent Senate Democrat apparently with President Trump, Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota. And you think, well, maybe this is that magical bipartisan work from the center, blue-collar Trump thing happening. They can't change time.
And it's just too much, Michael. There's just too much on the plate. So there's reporting that former White House advisor Steve Bannon met with Freedom Caucus Chairman Mark Meadows on Monday to discuss the group's agenda. Zeke, do you think that Steve Bannon could have more influence out of the White House than in it?
Certainly when you look at the matrix of issues that are facing Congress now, particularly with DACA on the agenda, funding for disaster relief, all of these sorts of issues. Yeah, Steve Bannon, and the thing that we're seeing more broadly is the tension between Trump's base and the mainstream of the Republican Party really hasn't been higher now than at any point since the president has been in the White House. So when it comes to something like DACA, that's something mainstream Republicans really want to see done almost immediately, and sort of many of the Freedom Caucus types don't want that. When it comes to something like Harvey, budget hawks are saying, well, maybe we need to offset that rather than just appropriating a lump sum of money. So yes, Steve Bannon, in a lot of ways, can have a lot more influence because ultimately in Washington, the big political lever is, what's the political outcome for me in the next election? And for a lot of Republicans in very safe Republican districts, for them it's, can I be primaried from the right? And Steve Bannon has the money, the influence, and the network really to galvanize an effort to make a lot of these Republicans vulnerable if they don't vote his way.
Well, Michael, you mentioned that President Trump will be in North Dakota Wednesday with that state's Senate Democrat Heidi Heitkamp to speak on tax reform. What is the significance of her presence, especially since her term ends this year?
Well, she's got a re-election coming up. She's in a very small state where energy will matter in 2018, voter motivation. And we have yet to see a significant crossover. By significant, I mean one. Senator crossover and say, I want to work with Donald Trump, and that's big. I want to go back to something that Zeke just said. I have to disagree about the idea that the Bannon wing has this power. I think the power comes from the fact that Republicans are widely still behind President Trump. He's still well above, around or above 80% among all Republicans. And if Trump can keep the Republican voters on his side, the Republican Congress is going to be very reluctant to take him on head on. They're going to be more likely to work with him. That's the real challenge here. It's not Bannon, it's Trump and his ability to go past these congressmen down to their members. Remember, Congress is at 15% approval. That's half of the president's.
Let's turn to foreign policy. On Wednesday, Zeke, House members will attend a classified briefing on North Korea with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and military leaders. What kind of actions can lawmakers take that haven't been tried before?
More broadly, what sort of actions can the United States take? That's what, talking to lawmakers, people, over the last couple of days, they're looking to hear from the administration, what can we actually do as a country, let alone Congress taking action, whether it be new sanctions or anything else. There's a desire among, rank and file lawmakers in both parties really to see a strategy articulated from the White House, a plan of action. And they've heard rhetoric. They've heard Nikki Haley coming out, Jim Mattis come out, Rex Tillerson a little bit over the last days and weeks, certainly talking tough. But they have, other than a few tweets from the president, they haven't seen anything in terms of what actually are the levers that they want to pull to influence North Korea's going down this course and now claiming to have tested a hydrogen bomb over the weekend, a massive escalation. So they're going to have a lot of questions. It's not really clear what the deliverables are from the White House because the White House acknowledges there really are no good options when it comes to North Korea. So lawmakers might be getting a window into the White House's dilemma, but it's not like they're going to come out of that briefing probably with a magic bullet of any sort.
Finally, Michael, former Sheriff David Clark has joined a super PAC closely aligned with President Trump. Now, the Daily Beast is reporting he was in talks for a White House position until Chief of Staff John Kelly killed that idea. What does that tell us about Kelly's influence in the White House?
Well, it tells us one thing, that David Clark went ahead and fired himself before he would get fired 6 to 8 weeks into the Trump administration, which was the pattern before. So, see, they're improving. You don't want, look, John, there are people who are very enthusiastic and people who are good at articulating how folks feel. And I watch David Clark on cable TV, and that's great. But having interviewed him many times, probably not ready to be a senior guy inside a presidential administration. He's probably in the right place.
All right. And on that note, Zeke Miller and Michael Graham, my thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.